The first point of education for the 2024-2025 NBA season is straight line pathway plays. Here, the offensive player, Bradley Beal, establishes a straight line path toward the basket, and the defensive player, Colin Gillespie, moves into Beal's path, and he makes contact that is clearly more than marginal. This contact by Gillespie moves Beal off his path, and the defensive foul was correctly called. Similar to the previous play, again we will see the offensive player establish a straight line path toward the basket, and the defensive player will make contact that moves him off that path. The offensive player, Colin Sexton, drives to the basket, and he is rerouted from his path by the defensive player, Trey Mann. The defensive foul was correctly called here by the slot official. One final example of an offensive player being taken off his path can be seen here. The offensive player, Zion Williamson, establishes a straight line path toward the basket. The defensive player, Benedict Mathurin, moves forward into Williamson, and he makes contact that is more than marginal, and this contact takes Williamson off his path. A defensive foul was needed on this play. Now, let's look at some examples where the offensive player is not taken off his path. The defensive player here, Naz Reid, maintains his defensive positioning, and he does not create any contact that would move the offensive player, Austin Reeves, off his path. We know that contact alone does not constitute a defensive foul, and while there is marginal contact on this play, there is no defensive foul, as this play was correctly ruled a no call and a play-on situation. The final play in this section is another example of a legal defensive play. The offensive player, Anthony Simons, drives to the basket, and his defender, Bryce McGowens, maintains his defensive position along Simons' path. The replay shows that McGowens does not initiate any illegal contact, nor does he reroute Simons off his straight line path to the basket. Again, this is a legal defensive play, and there was no foul needed or called here. The next point of education to review is verticality. This first play is an example of a defensive player maintaining verticality while making a legal defensive play. The defensive player, Chimezie Metu, establishes a legal guarding position prior to the offensive player, Trey Murphy III, starting his upward shooting motion. Metu maintains that legal defensive position as he jumps straight up to contest the field goal attempt. The marginal contact on this play is initiated by Murphy, and there is no foul by either player. Another example of legal verticality by a defensive player can be seen here. The secondary defender, Cason Wallace, establishes legal guarding position before the offensive player, Bones Hyland, starts his upward shooting motion. This is legal verticality by Wallace, and while a defensive foul was initially called here, it was correctly overturned via a coach's challenge to a no call. Our next example of verticality will show how the position of the defensive player can shift after contact occurs, but the defender would still be considered legal. Here, the defender, Zach Collins, establishes legal position, and he jumps straight up to contest the shot attempt by the offensive player, Rui Hachimura. But the ensuing contact that is initiated by Hachimura causes Collins' body to turn. As this turn by the defender occurred after contact and not before, this is a legal defensive play, and it was correctly ruled a no call and a play-on situation. Now, let's look at some examples where the defensive player does not maintain legal verticality. Here, the highlighted defender, Mo Bamba, jumps toward the shooter, Jaylen Brown, and in doing so, he initiates illegal contact with Brown. This A to B movement by Bamba is not legal verticality. As to be considered legal, he must jump vertically in an attempt to defend the shot. That is not the case here, and a defensive foul was correctly called. This next play is another example of a defender not maintaining legal verticality. The defender, Chet Holmgren, does not maintain a legal vertical position as his arms are tilted forward over the vertical space of the offensive player, Jaden Hardy. Holmgren then brings his arms down, and he makes illegal contact with his arms to the offensive player. To be considered legal, the defensive player must maintain his verticality as he attempts to defend the shot. That is not the case here, and this is a defensive foul on Holmgren.